Welcome back to another episode of the Stick-To-Ole-Miss Podcast. No Caleb today. It's just me, your host, TJ. You'll join alongside my boy, Kam Wicker of the Rebel Walk. We're going to be going through. We're going to be talking a little bit about basketball, both men's and women's side. A little bit about the portal, what's been going on, the news about Matthew Murrell declaring for the NBA draft. And then to reward everybody who's kind of followed along through that, we'll start talking about the football spring scrimmage, the first one, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit, kind of go through our notes and see what happened there. Cam was there live. He's got some tidbits from it, so we'll catch y'all in just a sec. Cam, I got to start this one off a little bit different. Because I got to do something that me being the host of something and someone who's got to try to gain traction for never does. But if you're here, like and subscribe. You made it this far. Give it a like, give it a subscribe. Let us know. Drop a comment, do whatever. Write us a question. We'll answer it on the next one. Go ahead, show us a little bit that you're watching, you're out there, you're listening. It means the world to us. But I also want to talk a little bit about an experience that I had over the past weekend, something that I don't normally do, Cam. For the first time since 2020, I made it to an Ole Miss baseball game.
Wow.
I know, right? I know. And the last one I went to was the tail end of the Princeton series in 2020 with a team that absolutely demolished everybody.
Yeah.
The national champions that never were. Let's call them that group. That was a fun one.
Give them the banner.
Yeah, but funny story is right after that, that team got ready for an LSU series. That never happened.
Yep.
If you remember correctly, everything kind of shut down. Yeah. So a little bit of bad karma there for the last time I went to a game. This time I made it to the Sunday game against Texas A&M. And was like, you know what, it'll be fun. Let's go check it out. I know the Ole Miss baseball team hasn't really performed, to what everybody's expectations were so far this year. They've dealt with some injuries, all that. Fun game. I will admit, Texas A&M, not a bad ballpark either. I went to the concession stand to get like a hot dog because I feel like that's kind of what you do at a baseball game,
Yeah.
You get a beer and a hot dog, you just kind of enjoy. And I go up there and it's like, I'm reading the prices for it, and it's like $15 for a hamburger. And I'm like, geez, what inflation are we doing here? But going back after that, I went and I just ordered the hot dog. It was a bacon chili dog, and that was like $10. And I was like, okay, well, that kind of feels like it might be a little fancy. I didn't realize it at the time, but whenever they handed it to me, it was a foot-long hot dog. And I was just kind of like, I don't want all I was like, I didn't expect it to be this big, and the guy working the concession stand is like, sir, this is A&M, and it was just like the most comment I think I've ever had. But unfortunately, I think I'm bad luck when it comes to going to Ole Miss baseball games because that game walk off in the bottom of the ninth. And I was just kind of just sitting there, and everybody's blowing all these bubbles around me, and I'm just like, oh man. I was like, this wasn't how this was supposed to go down. I was supposed to have a fun day. So officially marking myself on the do not go list for baseball. I will save the Ole Miss fandom that I will not go anymore. And if they turn it around, I will take just a partial credit for it. But transitioning a little bit, I think we're going to talk a little bit about basketball to start. Obviously, the biggest news kind of going on right now, Matthew Murrell takes to Instagram, later posts on Twitter as well, that he's declared for the NBA draft while maintaining his eligibility. For any of those of you that do not know, this is a fairly common thing. If you are I'm going to say a star player or somebody who, has NBA attention around you, someone like Matthew Murrell does, this is fairly common practice. They have until a certain deadline. I want to say it's in May.
Yeah, May 31st, I believe.
31st? they have until that time to kind of go. They'll test out the waters. Essentially, they'll get feedback from NBA executives, kind of answer some questions about like what's my range kind of looking like? What do I need to do to improve upon to make it to the next level? It's something that has recently happened, I want to say, in like the past decade. They allowed them to do this. I think it's really good for the game of basketball for them to kind of go learn a little bit. It does leave a little bit of a weird question for coaches who are trying to like fill out rosters because you have a guy just kind of in limbo out there. I'm not going to speak for Matt. I think he is a guy that's kind of on the tail end of round 2 at the moment. He's obviously got some very good qualities, definitely has that off-ball shooter potential, especially being a two-way player in the NBA. If that's kind of where he's going to go, that's right now. But just for what it is, he's going to go. He's going to get his feedback. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. My gut would tell me he's going to go get his feedback and probably would come back. But if he also hears, like, hey, we really like you, linger around via day 2. Or sorry, not day, a round 2 guy, then it might be something different. But you also got to understand is as you kind of get into that portion of the draft, especially in round 2 towards the later ends, there are guys who specifically don't want to have a weird thing to say, but some dudes kind of like if they're lingering around the end of day 2, they'd rather, tell their agent like, hey, let's get, the undrafted free agent spot and we'll pick what team we want to go to instead out of all of our offers. So just kind of giving you all an update on that. Kam, any thoughts on it? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think, we talked about it before we got on there. Terrence Davis did it a couple years back, and I believe he withdrew and came back for his senior year, I believe that year, and even came back better, and now he's a role player in the NBA. So I believe, like you said, maybe Matthew's probably going to come back and be part of the system. It's just kind of a weird spot right now. Transfer portal's going on. Coach Beard's going to have to like look for other players if Murrell doesn't come back. So that's going to be like the big issue. But same thing you said, I believe he's probably going to come back unless he gets, that intention of playing, being a round 2 guy.
Yeah. And I think he's in a situation where if he comes back, has a really good year, shoots the ball really well, I think he can kind of cement himself as that guy.
Yeah.
But for now, you kind of touched on it a little bit. It does make it a little bit weirder for Coach Beard. Where he's at, where the program is at, and he has to go out and look for players. And boy, has he! Perfect transition, perfect podcasting, Kam. We're going to kind of go through a little bit, just kind of give you some notes on where things are at with the transfer portal. Who are some looking at? Do we know anything a little bit more than what's out there? If you haven't, go ahead, head on over to the Rebel Walk. Put a lot of time into a transfer portal tracker. Kind of keeps up to date with everybody that Ole Miss has reached out to. And then, you can kind of it timestamps this as well. So a couple names I really wanted to highlight on in there. Speaking of the most latest, I have not updated. So you're, listening to this on probably Wednesday, Thursday. It'll probably be out there on Thursday, maybe late Wednesday night. Aaron Estrada out of Hofstra is the latest. He's a 2-time player of the year in his conference. I believe it's the Colonial, 2 times all-Colonial team. He was an all-MAC performer at St. Peter's. Originally started his career at St. Peter's, then went to Oregon for a year, then transferred to Hofstra. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. Past season, he averaged over 20 points a game. And kind of sets the theme for where a majority of this conversation is going. But Ole Miss is locked into the guard position really heavily right now. That's not saying they're not looking at forwards and centers. They are. We'll get to a couple guys later. But right now, you're kind of just sitting in this, like, they don't really know what they have at guard. I think we can assume that Murrell might come back, just based off of a gut feeling, a gut reaction. Ruffin's kind of still there a little bit. TJ Caldwell is there. But we don't know about Amari Abram, who we'll talk about a little bit on this list as well. So there is definitely a need at guard. But, right now, this roster, you probably have a lot of needs. But I was just a theme I noticed, especially early on, that the guards were someone that was kind of really involved.
I think you can touch on like the big man part. You touched on the big man part. Khalil Ware, I think, like kind of headlines that big man part, that big man side of it, and everyone wants that big time recruit, which I believe Beard will eventually touch into that big man spot. Ole Miss hasn't really been in the past a big man type of college, place, a destination. I would say, I guess, not really anybody I could think of off the top of my head. Maybe Seba Saez recently in the past years. That's really off the top of my head. I'm younger, so I haven't watched basketball for Ole Miss for too long. So that's really all I can think of.
The archives to find some big guys.
Yeah,
no,
for sure.
It is something. I mean, if you look at Chris Beard's level teams, you're going to see a guy who's probably going to be around 6'6" to 6'8", who would be my guess would be a forward, kind of maybe somebody who can really kind of block some shots as a rim protector, or maybe a more bouncier style player. I'm thinking of guys maybe like Chris Clark, Tariq Owens in the past in those Texas Tech teams. They're really a rim protector.
I believe you had a Culver that went pretty high in the draft. He was around 6'8", I believe.
Yeah, Culver's more of a wing in this kind of style. But there are some guys that they have looked at. Going to go mention another one, Letre Darthard, Utah Valley. I think this is one Ole Miss has kind of been in on a little bit. He was an all-WAC first-team player overall, and then an all-WAC defensive team, averaged 13.8 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, shot the ball 37% from deep. Also shot from the free throw line 88%. I always bring up free throw percentage when I talk about a shooter because that's normally a good indicator of touch. Sometimes you can have a guy who shoots like 35% from, three, but shoots 60% from the line. Like, odds are that's probably not going to be a sustainable three-point number. So I would kind of keep an eye on him. He did spend a year in junior college, start out his career before going to Utah Valley. It is worth noting his coach at Utah Valley, Mark Madsen, just got the job at Cal. There was rumors he was going to be up for the Stanford job if it was available. They stuck with Jared Haas. But now he's at Cal. Cal's also reached out. So there's probably a potential for him to reunite with his coach there. But Ole Miss has been involved. So, and I believe those are kind of like the two really top, like, Power 6 level programs that have been involved with it. So it'll be interesting to see. Coach Beard's going to love some of these defensive style guys as well. So keep an eye out on that one. Talking Javion McCollum. This is one that Ole Miss fans probably know a little bit about. If you're a basketball fan, he played at Siena this past year. Siena, Ole Miss played in the ESPN Events Invitational down in Orlando. Ole Miss is one of the teams to reach out to the 6'2" guard. He was a sophomore this year. He kind of upped his game. He became a full-time starter, 15.9 points, 3.9 assists, all MAC honors. Really good shooter. I think he had 24 points, 8 assists against Ole Miss. He kind of really just kept Siena in the game. That was the last of the undefeated season for Ole Miss. I think that was to get him to 7-0. Really good player. Probably going to get a lot of looks a lot of different places, but I've seen his name linked to Ole Miss quite a bit. A couple synergy numbers: 97 percentile on spot up jumpers, 87% from free throw line. Really excels at getting to his left. Kind of similar to like the next player we're going to talk to a little bit about, Amari Abram. Also really likes to go to his left. Amari, obviously, Ole Miss fans are going to know, so I'm not going to waste a ton of time. Freshman this year came in really kind of an inconsistent but electric scorer when he gets going. Especially, I kind of think in that Orlando tournament, and whenever the team kind of went under win case when things kind of loosened up a little bit, or at least that's kind of what it felt like. Players were playing a little bit loose. Amari had some more success around then as well. He's been out there. He's going to be testing the waters. There's been open communication with him and Chris Beard and his staff. Ole Miss is still going to remain an option until, he ends up deciding where he's going to go. But I think this is kind of one where you're going to see Amari probably wait out the process a little bit, see who's really out there, see who he's kind of can forge relationships with. Because if you remember, he actually was a commit to Texas A&M. Then something happened there, and he kind of went back on it before ultimately deciding on Ole Miss. So he's probably trying to look for some stability going forward. If there's any other guards, yes. I just scrolled to the one I wanted to talk about. Jalen Cook out of Tulane. Initially started his career at LSU, guard, transferred to Tulane. He's a Louisiana guy. I think he's from Walker, if I'm not mistaken. 2-time All-American player. Averaged 19.9 points per game this year, so sitting right there at 20, at 5 assists, 1.8 steals. Gets it done on both sides of the ball. It's going to be interesting on this one, Cam. It's going to be interesting on this one. I do have it on on a source that pretty much kind of said that, reached out to him, someone who's kind of more independent style, asked about kind of the schools that were involved the most. Ole Miss was mentioned amongst like the top 7. That's kind of information that I don't think you're going to just find out there by searching for it. So it'll be interesting to see. LSU is also one of those schools, despite starting his career there. Coaching change happens, so he's a big LSU guy. So whether Matt McCann can kind of land him or not, that's going to be something interesting. So just keep an eye out for that one. I think it'll be one of those. I think you're going to see Ole Miss kind of in the final, whatever schools that make it. So I think now we can kind of probably transition a little bit, Cam. We can kind of go into some of the maybe the forwards that we've kind of noticed a little bit. Most recently, I think the biggest guy that Ole Miss has went after, and I mean big as in like an actual literal big guy, Micah Hanlogden out of Marshall, guy I know really well, being a Marshall fan. He's a freshman of the year in the Sun Belt. That's all I'm going to say about it because he's already released a top 8 and Ole Miss wasn't involved. He's going to visit NC State. He's going to visit Florida. We might be seeing him in the SEC. I think Tennessee's been trying to reach out a little bit. I know Georgia's reached out. They've reached out. If you know what I mean. But I think you touched on it earlier, Kel Elware, Arkansas guy, former McDonald's All-American, just big-time top 10 recruit, 7 feet tall, really good shot blocking skills. Ole Miss was involved the first time around. He visited the campus last July, ultimately decided on going to Oregon. Really kind of played spot minutes there. I think he averaged 6 points a game. I feel like that's kind of where he was hovering. Bad journalism part 1, bad podcasting part kind of 10 today. Yeah, 6.6 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, 1.3 blocks. Only played 15.8 minutes. This is a guy who's trying to go somewhere to get his name back into the NBA draft talks. I mean, this is a guy who was preseason lotto potential. He's going to go somewhere where he's going to be able to shine a little bit, going to be able to play, hopefully get his name back into that conversation. I think Arkansas is going to be involved. Just a little bit of a hunch, just a little bit, just with I mean, you can throw a dart at a wall, and you could just have every single player in the transfer portal's name up there on that wall. It doesn't matter who you hit. Arkansas is involved. Somehow, some way, they are involved. They are nonstop into the portal, man. It's absolutely
they got a lot of exposure during the March Madness, and their coach. Great individual, great energy guy. It seemed like a lot of players love that, and I guess it's pretty big on the portal guys for sure.
I don't know how he does it, man. I don't know how much he does it. They had to get 10 guys last year and made it look, and then at the bottom of it, the bottom of the guys they got was top 100, and I was like, oh my gosh, So I'm hoping Chris Beard can kind of get some action going like that because I think we got about 8 spots to fill right now. Maybe a couple more depending on how things go. So, but that's kind of your update for where things are in the portal. A few guys out there I think Ole Miss can kind of go and really kind of hone in on. I'll get another update on that probably here later tonight. But we're going to transition a little bit. Y'all have made it through. You made it through the first 18, almost 19 minutes of the podcast. You've listened to the basketball talk. You've understood. You've heard about my baseball stories, my bad fan and my bad luck. Cam, tell us a little bit about football because that's what the people are here for.
Okay, I'm gonna start with the quarterback competition. Seems like the most intriguing spot of the football practices and scrimmages. Recently, in this past scrimmage, it looked more like a quarterback competition. And depending on who you ask, is it a quarterback competition? Jackson Dart said in a press conference recently, he believes he's the starter. He sees himself as the starter. He said he had that year 1. He thinks he established himself. He believes it's his job to lose. If you were to ask Lane Kiffin, I don't know if it'd be the same answer. Lane Kiffin might think, this is a competition between Spencer Sanders and Jackson Dart. He may even throw Walker Howard in there. Walker Howard is a very talented player, and he could see himself in a starting role at some point. But Jackson Dart and Spencer Sanders is the main focal point. And in the scrimmage game, Jackson Dart made some really good throws. Spencer Sanders made some really good throws. And I believe Greg McElroy even said recently that he believed Spencer Sanders was going to be the starter. And, I don't know how much Greg Eichel was around the program, but
insider Greg McElroy.
I don't know how much he's around the program, but Jackson Dart has been taking more of the first team reps. Spencer Sanders had the shoulder injury, limiting him a little bit in practices. But some unofficial stats from that scrimmage: Jackson Dart went 8 for 12, 179 yards, with a touchdown through the air. He had 31 rushing yards. He completed a lot of passes. Last year we seen the Darts. I believe Darts completion percentage was around the 60% range, and he had a couple of games where he was touching 80 almost in a couple of games, but he never really had that big time game passing last year. He had the Vanderbilt game where he had 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a 3 touchdown game against Texas A&M, and I believe he had early in the season he had around like a 78% passing game. So
they didn't have to throw it as much.
We didn't have to throw it as much. We had Quinshon Judkins.
When you have a backfield when you have a backfield like they did last year, you don't have to throw the ball as much.
And but Spencer Sanders, on the other hand, has played in a lot of big games. He played in the Big 12 championship a couple years back. He's played a lot of games at Oklahoma State in the past. So, if you're looking at a big game standpoint, Spencer Sanders obviously has got a little bit more experience. He's 4 years older. Dart still hasn't turned 20 yet, and he's got a lot to learn. So, from that standpoint, I feel like Dart's he's not really running away with the job right now, but it's his job to lose, like I just said earlier, and like I believe someone like Lane Kiffin would say as well. It's Jackson Dart's job to lose for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to kind of throw this out a little bit about Dart. Just kind of talking about kind of like his career path and something. It's interesting to see because this is the first time we've seen him have a full off season with one program. About it, he goes to USC out of high school. He's National Player of the Year, and he goes there and he is a backup to Kanan Slovis. Slovis goes down. Dart comes in, has a few big games. He's throwing the ball up there to Drake London, NFL player right now, and then Lincoln Riley comes in that offseason, and Dart's kind of wondering what's going on. Is he going to be bringing Caleb Williams with him? They bring Caleb Williams over, so Dart enters the portal. He eventually lands at Ole Miss. He comes in, he has a competition with Luke Altmaier, and he kind of wins the job a few weeks into the season there. So, and he does well. But I think we can both agree that the expectations for anybody following Matt Corral is probably going to be a little bit too high. It's just not a fun situation to be following a legend like that because, like I said, Matt Corral was kind of like a maestro in the Lane Kiffin. So now we get to this offseason, and Jackson Dart finally gets the opportunity to become the leader we think he can be. He's kind of had the opportunity to take over this team, and he is just 20 years old, and he's going into year 2, and he's probably feeling a little bit more confident and understanding what's going on. I think Lane Kiffin's called him one of the more improved players on the team, which is something to say because I think Jackson Dart did pretty well last year. So it's just interesting to see. I think, it's going to be fun to kind of watch how these scrimmages go and how practices go from here on out. But I really think Dart has a chance to really kind of stand out as well. And then Sanders, like you said, Sanders brings a whole different quality with you where he brings a ton of collegiate experience. He understands the game. He understands the process, how this is going to be. He's going to take a while to learn the terminology, but he's going to pick it up quick because he's a veteran in college football. He knows how this goes. I'm excited for it. I really am. I'm excited to see how this kind of plays out. It's two different kind of sides of the spectrum with it. You got an experienced vet quarterback coming in and kind of competing a little bit with a very toolsy player who's kind of zone.
Yeah, before I step into the rest of the offense, I'd like to add to that Spencer Sanders. If you were keeping up with like his recent practices, he seemed like he wasn't throwing the ball as much in practice, but at the scrimmage game, he was definitely slinging it around a lot more. He was called a lot more passing, but I believe he threw it 21 times, I think maybe. Not as many completions as Dart, but he was throwing it around definitely a lot more at the scrimmage game than he was at the practice for sure. Mm-hmm. And for the rest of the offense, guys on the O-line, the trenches, not a lot of people give these guys some love, but I'm going to give them some love. Victor Kroon's playing left tackle right now with Jaden Williams out with injury, off-season surgery. Jeremy James also out with off-season surgery, and Reese McIntyre and Quincy McGee kind of in that role for him right now. Cedric Milton's kind of been out there a little bit with Micah Pettis at that right tackle role, Eli Acker at that guard position, and Caleb Warren at the center. Kind of give those big guys some love. For the receiver room, another room that's gotten a lot of new faces. So far, we're seeing a lot of JJ Henry returning from last year, Dylan Knox returning from last year, and Chris Marshall, the transfer from Texas A&M. Those are the three guys we're kind of seeing the most right now. Braylon Brown, Larry Simmons also getting a lot of rotation reps as well. We're going to get Trey Harris, Austin Watkins back. Quad Davis, I believe, is coming off an injury as well. So, I mean, a lot of guys that aren't playing right now that we're going to see when the fall rolls around. But JJ Henry is someone that I believe is going to be a big-time playmaker, someone that, I wouldn't say Elijah Moore type because, Elijah Moore was a great player. But we can definitely make that comparison. JJ Henry may even be one of the faster guys on the team. He's definitely got some burners, definitely target a lot on the deep balls. I believe he's definitely going to be in that slot role a little smaller receiver type. Going to be running that jet package kind of like Dayton Wade was doing at one point. Oh, yeah, Dayton Wade didn't play this past scrimmage. I don't know. I'm not sure why, but he wasn't playing in the scrimmage game, but he is at the practices. And Jalen Knox looks like he's going to be a big-time playmaker as well. A lot in that jet motion offenses, too, that Kiffin likes to run. And Chris Marshall looks like he's going to be a legit outside receiver.
Mm-hmm. What about Trey Harris? No love for
Trey Harris. Trey Harris, he's been wearing the black jerseys a little bit, and I don't think he's had any contacts in practice, and I don't believe he's really caught any balls in practice that much. I think Trey Harris is going to be a big impact guy once he gets on the field. He was a big impact guy at LA Tech, and I believe once he gets on the field, he's going to be like that John Mingo type, that Laquan Treble type, that Ole Miss offense, that receiver we always got.
Yeah, the receiver room looks very deep this year, which is kind of something that I think in last year specifically, maybe it wasn't as deep prior years. So
yeah,
good to see they kind of retooled and reloaded in that room going forward. But I absolutely love you mentioning the big guys up front. Them boys are working down there. So I love hearing that. I love hearing it. We don't shout out the linemen enough. They absolutely deserve more credit. It's going to be a fun group to watch.
A lot of returning from that group last year, other than Mason Brooks and Nick Broker. So we're going to have a lot of experience up front.
And that helps win games. And somebody by the number of 4 in the backfield's licking their chops to get ready to run behind them.
Speaking of the backfield, Quinshon Judkins was named Walter Camp first team preseason All-America a day before the scrimmage game on Saturday. Dew Bentley, most people know him as Dew, is running that running back 2 role right now. We saw a lot beginning of last year before he derailed his season with some injuries. I believe he had 4 rushing touchdowns in around like the first 3 games maybe last year. And so he was getting carries last year. We saw he was definitely I believe I said maybe in the last podcast that he looks like maybe he's one of the fastest guys on the field too. And he definitely could put on the burners. And I believe he's going to be a good 1-2 punch right there with Quinshon Judkins. And we also got Kendrick Rieskino coming in the fall. He's going to be, I think he's a 4-star out of a 4-star in last year's class. So, I mean, we're going to have a deep running back room once he gets here. Matt Jones has kind of been in that 3rd running back role right now. But you can see Rieskino going to that 3rd running back role, kind of like Quinshon did beginning of last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of get those guys back in there. I think you're kind of seeing, especially with Judkins, especially with Zach Evans, Jerry and Ely, Snoop Connor. I think you're starting to see people kind of, I think we talk a lot about Ole Miss being wide receiver but I think you're kind of seeing a little bit of a transition for running backs, seeing the success in the Ole Miss offense and kind of wanting to go be a part of that. A lot of that, maybe in the more recency bias, doing to Judkins, somewhat historic freshman season. It's definitely putting the Ole Miss running backs room on notice, and recruits are probably excited to hear what the pitch is from someone like Lane Kiffin coming to talk to him.
Yeah, recent running back recruit Chris Davis recently committed and said that he saw what Quinshon Judkins did in year 1, and he wants to do that too.
Yeah, I think any running back recruit would love to do what Quinshon Judkins did year 1, man. That's some absolutely wild stuff right there. But we got to talk a little bit about the opposite side of the ball. Pete Golden coming in year 1, defensive coordinator coming from Alabama. Saw a thing where he was listed as like a top 10 defensive coordinator in college football. Ole Miss has got their hands on him now. What have we noticed in the scrimmage? Who's out there making plays? We talked a little bit about it from the practices. I kind of want to know more on the scrimmage side.
Yeah, as for Golden, he seems like like he's a top defensive mind for sure. Coached at Bama for many years, had some really good Bama defenses, pumped out a ton of good players at Bama into the draft. He's going to bring the 4 down lineman to this system, which a lot of Ole Miss fans were hoping we'd see from him. And we're gonna rush the passer a lot more. And we saw that a little bit in the scrimmage game. Not too much contact in these scrimmage games, but we're gonna see a lot more once maybe in the Grove Bowl, maybe once the fall starts for sure. But on that D line, Xavier Harris looks absolutely massive in the middle, and he's hard to miss. He's just kind of that standout guy, and you just when you're looking out of the field and you see Xavier Harris, you're like, who's that guy? And he's just one of those type of guys that you're going to rely heavy on in the middle, especially with this new defensive scheme. We're going to try to stop the run a little more. J.J. McGee's also returner. He's going to be in that defensive front in the interior, stopping the run. Jared Ivey going to be the guy getting after a passer. Jameer Lewis. Not a lot of people know about this guy transfer. He was kind of in that edge role with Jared Ivey a little more this past week in the scrimmage games in that 4 down lineman set. With the absence of Cedric Johnson right now with the injury. Jameer Lewis looks pretty fast. He looks like more of a traditional rushing linebacker, I would say, off the edge. Someone kind of like Sam Williams we've had in the past.
I just want like the mental image. Just bear with me for a second, all right? Like the AT&T like raising the bar thing. I just want to see that with the Ole Miss defensive line where you got like Jared Ivey, like outside small guy, and then you got Ty Malone when he comes back from baseball season, and then J.J. McGee, and then Xavier Harris. Man, that's just a huge unit.
Yeah, and Jared Ivey's not a small edge rusher.
Bigger. Mm-hmm.
So we have Jamon Gordon, who's also been in that edge role a little bit. Transfer Joshua Harris, also really big guy. He's going to be in that middle of the defense as well with McGee and Xavier Harris. As for the linebackers, we're going to run more of a 2-set linebackers, maybe occasional third linebacker. As of right now, the 2 returners, Kari Coleman and Ashante Sistrunk, they're going to be the 2 guys as of right now, mainly getting that those first team reps to the returners. Pete Golden seems like he's really liking them. It seems like Sistrunk and Coleman kind of follow around Golden a lot more, kind of like, getting insight on him, kind of picking at Golden's mind a little bit. And Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, he seems like he's always around Pete Golden as well. He seems like he's going to be a really impact linebacker. He's a big linebacker. When you stand next to him or get close to him, he's really big for a linebacker, almost a tight end type build. And Monty Montgomery, maybe a smaller linebacker, but he's definitely a more stockier guy, and he's going to be a run stuffer. We saw him play a little bit at Louisville when we played them in recent years with Matt Corral quarterback.
What have you kind of been seeing from like Kari Coleman? Because I think this is a guy that's really kind of fascinating because he's just a tackles for loss machine. And now we're switching things up a little bit where maybe he kind of will be playing on that second level a little bit more.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete. You could tell he's got a lot of potential. And, he didn't play as much at the beginning of the season last year. But when he's on the field, he's a high-impact player. He makes plays. When you're just watching the defense, you're going to see Kari Coleman fly around the field. And this year, I think you're going to see a lot more of that. Pete Golden's going to try to cover the middle of the field a lot more. And with those middle linebackers, I feel like he's going to do that a lot more. Kari Coleman seems like he's more coverage linebacker for sure. You see him go out to the flat a lot more, cover those, screen passes, tight end, dump passes, Kari Coleman's going to definitely be the guy that breaks up passes, even Monty Montgomery as well.
God, it's wild to think of Kari Coleman as a guy who's a coverage guy.
Yeah.
That's a guy who had 15 tackles for loss. He was, freshman All-American. Wow.
Yeah, we just watch him play. He's a freak athlete.
It's wild to think there's so much talent on this defense. They have built the depth on that defensive side of the ball like crazy. The Portal King doing his thing a little bit, but it's just wild to think about all the chess pieces they have out there.
Yeah, a lot of those guys came in last year, and a lot of them are returning from this year. But just like you said, the Portal King adding those pieces, and Kari Coleman, he's just a freak athlete. And like I said, watching him on the field, you can tell that he can do it. He can do it all. For sure.
And I mean, there's more. You mentioned Montgomery, you mentioned Jean-Baptiste as well. It's just there's just so many, and you get used to seeing all these different names out there and figuring out what they all can do and how it's all going to come together. It's going to be a lot of fun. So wrap us up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the secondary, and then if you got any specialist news, anything there.
Yeah, as for the secondary, Kiffin saw this as one of the weaker spots right now. We got a few bit of injuries in the secondary. I mean, I believe DeMarco Williams is injured. I believe DeAndre Prince is injured. Nick Cole, he's a freshman. We have a lot of guys wearing black jerseys in the DB unit. But as of right now, on the corners on Saturday, it was Zamari Walton and Richard O'Brien mainly. Richard O'Brien, name a lot of people maybe not hearing, but he's definitely maybe stepping up. He's a smaller corner, and he seems like he could be a lockdown type of guy. John Sanders and Ishim Young are going to be in those slot roles, which we saw a lot last year from Otis. And I mean, with Young there, I believe he's a very kind of like Coleman, freak athlete, can do it all. A little bit smaller though. But, I mean, he seems like he could fly around the field a lot more. He seems like he's the guy, just following guys around, maybe tight ends in the slot, kind of guys like Michael Trigg when we have to face guys like, Brock Bowers and stuff like that when we play Georgia.
A lot of freaks in the SEC, man, a lot of freaks. I do want to kind of go back and I want to talk about one little thing. We've been talking about football quite a bit. Ole Miss had its pro day recently. If you were talking last episode, Jordan Reed released his mock draft. I've talked a little bit about it. Jonathan Mingo, 4th round. Not so fast. Roger Shea releases his 2-round mock draft coming out. Another ESPN draft analyst. Jonathan Mingo, last pick of the 2nd round, Kansas City Chiefs. So, interesting. It's going to be something fun to watch. If you got a prop bet going on Jonathan Mingo, where he's going to go, I'd be panicking a little bit because he's flying up draft boards a little bit. So, fun times to see, especially when you see Ole Miss guys. The slant god is now finding himself a little bit further up the draft boards, and we might see him at the tail end of the 2nd round. Crazy to see, but playmakers are always needed. Wide receivers always, and he's done absolutely great work at the combine and at his pro day.
Yeah, everyone's falling in love with Mingo's feet, saying he's really quick receiver for a big guy. Another DK Metcalf, AJ Brown type build. So that's like, he ran a 4.5 at the combine. So 4.46, I believe. So I mean, you're gonna get speed out of him. You're gonna get playmaking, and like you said, slant god.
Slant god indeed. All right, Cam, I think that's gonna wrap us up for this one. Go ahead, tell the people where they're at, tell the people where they can find you. Maybe a little bit about that in general. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying a little bit there, Cam?
You can find me at Kam_Wicker at Twitter. And you could also find me at the Rebel Walk covering football, baseball, a little bit of basketball as well. And you can subscribe to this YouTube channel, give it a like, give it a comment, and we'll try to answer your comments in the next show.
You're telling me it's not Kam Wicker 7? Who would have thought?
It's not Kam Wicker 7.
It's not Kam Wicker 7. Oh, just midway through. I was heated. I was ready to go. I was hyped for that outro. All right, that's we're just gonna go ahead and call it quits there. Follow me at DJ Oxley 1. Follow him at Kam_Wicker. I was so ready for it. But that's our show. Go ahead, like Cam said, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Follow the Rebel Walk. Be sure to check it out for all your Ole Miss sports need. For our boy Caleb out there, we miss you. I'm sure he'll be back on the next one. We'll see y'all later.